the top left-hand side. Blue Terran player from Pixel 1. This is FanTaSy. Very popular in China as well. In the bottom right, Red Zerg from Kaizi Gaming. Misaki, there you go. Okay then, so a quick reminder of the format. Each team begins with 4 lives, 4 players they can send out. A 2-0 means you eliminate your opponent and you stay alive for the next series. A 1-1 means you're both eliminated, both teams lose a life. If it comes down to being 1 life each for the last teams and they both have to revive, it's a best of 1. So here we go, FanTaSy looking for a 2-0 so you can stay out, and you'd expect FanTaSy will want to try and survive to play. I feel like actually anyone they send out is someone FanTaSy can take a map off of. So FanTaSy, big real test. Get past Misaki, try and take a map, I'd say. So it is going to be gas racks opener, which means a lot of gas in play. Fast factory can be made. As we set up into this. Papa Mitch with another gifted sub to Gurney. 57 for 170 in total. Thank you so much, Papa Mitch. I appreciate it. Okay, so as we set this up, Reaper is on the way out from FanTaSy to get this started. Orbital command about to complete. Command center on the natural. So it's a Reaper expansion again. A lot of gas in play though, so this is going to be factory focused right away. Should typically be a second gas now the factory's put down. Gas first for a 3cc doesn't usually add up all too well, but let's see when he starts to drop this reactor and then the second gas if he is going to take it. Let's try it on. I mean, it is a map where you can get away with a third CC quite quickly if you'd like to. As FanTaSy brings this Reaper down the map, and I think he is going to... Okay, there we go. Second gas just coming out. It was getting to like that final moment before, you know, if you don't put the second gas down now, it is just going to be 1 gas opener. It's just going to be soon. A couple of things here. Fighting away with this Reaper, so Reaper dealing some damage. Command Center going to finish up. And of course, Misaki. What is he planning? Like, he has played aggressive and all-in all season long. What is his game plan here in this ZVT? I really am intrigued, because he has to have something planned, because he had to have known playing FanTaSy was an option, right? Or a possibility in this. Barracks building a tech lab at the moment. Starport next to it. The thing is, I feel like FanTaSy will just open safely into Banshees each game, and by doing that, he's going to put himself in a position where it's going to be very difficult for Misaki to do any damage. So I would imagine it's going to be a starport to a tech lab. Banshees are making a bit of a resurgence in TVZ. And especially when you're kind of the better, stronger player, a Banshee does so much for you defensively. And there's so much micro potential aggressively if you do get to use it aggressively. It's really not too surprising. We'll see the first couple of drones going down already. So a couple of drones will drop. As we are going to see the Hellions pulling back out into the center of the map. Cloak obviously does start up with that Banshee. We have seen some Cloakless Banshees openers, but don't really feel the need for it here. This is a little bit interesting. The Hellions go by. They see the Zerglings. They get a good lineup. More Zerglings coming in. The Hellions try to escape away and actually loses a Reaper. 3 of them get out of there. I mean, not bad considering he went all the way deep towards the ramp there. We'll get out with 3 Hellions alive. Building a siege tank already as well. Super safe out of FanTaSy. Can maybe turn this into some aggression as well. Let's see. There's a couple of drones mining away on the third base. Spore crawl up a base, so you set up nicely. Overlord Scout is good for information, but that is a supply block and a half. 52 over 50, and the Overlord just now started. Is Parton on any of these teams? Yes, he is going to be playing for Pixel 1, the same team as FanTaSy. And he is guaranteed to come out as long as FanTaSy loses at some point here. Pretty much. They only have 3 players on Pixel 1, so he is part of their roster if they do have to use the roster in full. Unless FanTaSy just goes on a murder spree. I mean, that'd be really... I mean, that'd be hype enough anyways, though. Remember, the difference between winning and losing here is if you win, you're guaranteed top 2. If you lose, you're guaranteed top 3. So it's basically the difference between going straight to the finals and having $7,000 guaranteed versus playing the round before the finals and having $5,600 guaranteed. So it's again, $1,400 matchup to guarantee, but you're not eliminated from the tournament. You can still come back. It's just an extra match you'll have to play. Banshee coming forwards, and he's going to get a couple of drones. So far, so good. As the 1-1 melee upgrades. Well, they are coming up as well. This Banshee going to find a couple of workers here, and we'll look for more. There's number 3, since we started talking about this. So that's 5 in total. Good job by the Banshee. About to run out of energy. Should be able to get away. He's on the edge of creep, so the Queens can't really chase effectively. And FanTaSy again just continues to pick up damage. I have to say, Masaki's playing pretty straight up and standard. He's not really playing that kind of cheesy, aggressive style I was expecting. I'm not sure what he could do at this stage to really make this crazy and aggressive and like all in essentially, which is again has been his style throughout the season. Maybe something like a 1-1 Baneling bust, where you just like max up on like probably like done with drones in the next 5 or so drones and just go like massling Bane rather than going up to 70+ workers. Are there replay packs of this tournament? No, we're on a clean feed here. There'll be replay packs up to and including Week 5 and the Jin Air Green Wings versus Ocean Gaming match, but there will not be replay packs of these playoffs because we're on a clean feed. I don't get the replays, so I can't send them out to you, unfortunately. It's one of the rare occasions we don't get replays to send out for you guys as subs. Things back down the right as we do see tanks and marines out the front of the third base. FanTaSy's supply, though, is already just up by 10, which as a Terran player is a pretty good indicator that they're doing a pretty good job of this already. One about halfway done at the moment. The DC Marine's going to be stimming up to the top side. Marines on the right-hand side as well are going to be dealing some more damage to these Zerglings. And Bane's going to be finishing up on that bottom side. Still more Zerglings up on the top, and well, 2-2 upgrades still coming in as well. Tanks firing. Oh, saves the tank FanTaSy, and that's a lot of Lings going down for nothing gained. Just going to be seeing Banelings. More Lings around the bottom. Marines pressing in and will get some extra creep tumors. FanTaSy just has so much already. Masaki, I mean, FanTaSy doesn't go over 2-2 upgrades though, so that is something that Masaki will have over FanTaSy given time. But obviously has to survive up until that point first of all, and at the moment is setting up Lingbane through the center to counter. And SCV gets picked off as well, and we're just going to be seeing this army getting ready to go up in towards this third base location. Bane's going to run in towards this. Tank's going to get maybe a little bit surrounded. Baneling's going to chase on into this, and FanTaSy has to get split in, and it feels as though he's done the job. The tank fire was good, targeted on Banelings as well, and FanTaSy holds with ease. And that's just one of those locations where I don't think Masaki should commit to the fight. It's one of those, if you can counterattack in and catch a group of units, perfect. But if you're fighting the whole army, it's not worthwhile. The Lingbane isn't meant to take straight up fights. It's meant to dart around. It's meant to defend on creep where you can surround, get flanks, you know, really play to your speed and momentum strength. Not like this. As we're going to be seeing those two Banshees. Well, they hang out overhead on this right-hand side base, and Masaki's going to type GG. No news for Mitch. Gift now a sub to Roland Thunder. Thank you so much for all the continued gifted subs. Game number 2. And it's FanTaSy on the bottom right-hand side with a winning map number 1. Top left-hand side, it's going to be Misaki, the Red Zerg player from Kaizi Gaming. So again, this is best of 2, where FanTaSy has already picked up the first map, which means Misaki will be picked off and 1 life will be lost for Kaizi. Misaki has this chance now to take FanTaSy down and put a point on the board for Kaizi, and if he can't, then FanTaSy will stay on to play the next series. A few extra drones on the way up at the moment. Barracks dropping down in the front as well as we enter the early stages of our second game. Like I said, guys, I said this earlier, but it really is a very cool format, something a little bit different that actually does really work as well. It does really work as well, so very cool. There's a couple of workers jumping into the extractor here. As we do have Command Center starting up from FanTaSy in that natural expansion, so getting that up and ready to go. Spawning pool going to be continuing in a moment or so, as we do have the Reaper is about to complete. CC down here on Ephemeron. We'll see if FanTaSy can just macro his way up into an advantage again. We'll see if Misaki has something planned. Misaki is delaying his queens and lings, hoping to get a hatchery. So he starts those late again, and still this time won't actually sneak the hatchery down because of this SCV patrolling. He wins this fight. Drone. And then the Reaper gets revenge. I mean, in a way it's better, right? Because it costs you a drone. And FanTaSy's going to lose more mining time pulling an SCV back home than the drone is, which is meant to become a hatchery anyways. So it's actually kind of worth the trade-off. Do you see this Reaper still attacking? Going to see the drone's going to get popped a little bit. Couple of lings still going after the Reaper. Drone will be able to finally drop the hatchery down, but man, this Reaper's picking up kills at the moment. There's going to be another Zergling. It's 5 kills on this Reaper. Great start from FanTaSy. Really good opener. Link speed about to finish up. Drone taking some damage there, and this Reaper just keeping such good track. This is the issue. How do you actually all-in someone like FanTaSy when he sees everything you do for the last 2 minutes of the 3-minute game? Like, you can't do anything crazy when you're just being scouted every second of the game so far. We're going to be seeing the Fusion Core dropping down in the back of this main base, so getting that set up. There is going to be a Battlecruiser opening from FanTaSy to change it up a little bit going into our second map here. Reaper gets picked off, but the Hellions got a creep tumor, which I feel is a worthwhile dive forwards. Slow that down a little bit. We'll re-spread forwards now. So again, the more you slow down the creep, the better, especially in a scenario where you're building this battle cruiser and you're going to be really looking to pull queens between the third base and the natural / main. So setting up towards that, there's 10 Zerglings on the way, a couple extra queens being built as well. Bunch of Hellions going to be moving in towards the middle of the map for the moment, so heading up towards the upper left side, and you see some Zerglings just running down the left as well, so a lot of lings on the way out. I mean, Misaki, 10 more in production, big counterattack already setting up. And there's no BC at home anymore. Still Hellions being produced, 2 extra gases. Looks like we will have a mech follow-up rather than playing bio here in this game number 2. Hellions already roasting the defensive lings though, which is obviously a problem because as lings stream out a couple at a time, it's not looking great. Lings across the map are going to try and cancel this third CC. You know, they might get that. There's not a lot there to really stop this from happening, right? You can't repair the CC that's still building. It's going to get pretty close. Nidus Network now dropping down from Misaki. He decides to pull away from it. He's losing more Zerglings. That's kind of the biggest issue, right? If he wants to go into this Nidus and play like a Ling Queen attack, it's going to hurt a lot. Oh my god, what a scan. He scans the Nidus. Oh, that's so crazy. That is so crazy as we see this BC hanging out overhead. Lings going to continue to press forwards and, well, I mean, this orbital command still taking some damage. Nidus coming in behind this wall-off. I mean, was it worth trying to get the orbital earlier? Probably not. Next Nidus in the main BC teleports on top of it, and it feels as though Misaki's attempt to be all in right now is getting shut down heavily. Another Nidus will go down at the front, but I mean, there's Hellions already there. Now a Nidus right at the front. He actually stops the one going in behind the mineral line, or behind the wall off, so He's just going to try and set up at the front here, but I feel like FanTaSy should have plenty. The thing is, defensively, a BC, as long as it can be repaired, is never going to die to Queens. And there's no reason it can't be repaired when these Hellions are going to hold the ground against the Zerglings. So these BCs should do pretty well in this overall. I mean, it's double BC as well, so Queen even misses a transfusion there, so already losing Queens as well. And Misaki is kind of just out of here. He's realizing this is not working. Drops down a Spire, starts to build drones, realizes he has to try and react to this, but he's down 16 workers already. He is obviously going to be up against double battlecruiser, harassing. He's in a very weak position, so Misaki attempting to all in. It's not working out. And like I say, I feel like Misaki got a bad draw taking on FanTaSy because his biggest success, he's won 2 maps this season. They were both against Protoss players. I feel like that's where Misaki really finds his own strength, and obviously that's not going to be the case here at all. BC's up the left, going to fly into the natural expansion. Going to be looking for some further damage. Going to find an extractor right away. Extractor number 1. Going to go down. Extractor number 2 being fired on as well. Has to cancel, rebuild. A couple of drones getting picked off. 8 workers down as there's just Hellions on the 3rd base. That's where the major damage is being done. No response to these Hellions at all over here. And again, this is FanTaSy. He was already ahead, and now he's getting further ahead with this Hellion damage. 22-23. Drones killed. As these BCs fly up into the natural, gets another couple of drones. Zerglings get picked off as well. Queen's coming over, and BCs are pushed off. Roachron about to finish up. Another BC coming in. Misaki's trying to get to a Roachron, but I mean, it's not the wrong decision. It's just he can't even really afford that many roaches. This army of our Terra player is just going to do amazing things no matter what in this scenario. A few more Hellions up the right-hand side, and Misaki is going to try and hang in there, but like as previously stated, it is not looking pretty at all. SBC's going after a couple of drones, 3 workers down already. As again, just more Hellions into a mineral line, even more drones are chopping. This is the issue. Once you get behind, someone like FanTaSy is just going to keep throwing units at you to keep you behind. And those battlecruisers continue to fight. They pick off a Queen just there. Misaki will type out the GG points overall in the match. You'll see basically that Pixel 1 have 4 lives remaining, and Super and Kaizi have 3 lives remaining when that graphic shows up at the top shortly. As we have FanTaSy in the bottom left on World of Sleepers. Top right hand side, our red Protoss player Super from Kaizi Gaming. Kaizi are a very popular team here in China. You can see on the graphic on the top that Pixel 1 still have 4 lives, while Kaizi have 3 lives remaining. That's because Misaki did lose. Oh, Twitch chat copying a real chat. Yes, there's an actual audience. It's a live event. It's full. Sold out. And a free KFC given to them all as well. I still stand by my question. Where is Wardy's KFC? Next season I should set out a demand. I'd be like, look, listen, I'll cover the tournament, but I need my KFC when you guys do the playoffs. Has there been any actual footage of the audience? Yeah, we've seen those guys a bunch. Mostly kind of between series and stuff and between games, but they show them during the game sometimes as well, especially when they have the KFC. They don't sell tickets. Yeah, I didn't mean like sold out, but like the seating is full. So like it's a full audience for the venue, it would seem. Probe gonna get pushed away. And as we do see, the Reaper is going to pop out in a couple of moments. So we're going to be popping out here and heading up to the top right-hand side. Cybernetics core about to complete. Depth going to start chrono boosting out of this gateway. So getting that ready to go in these early minutes here. going to be a factory opener, of course. I'm really intrigued to see what Super does. Remember, Super doesn't have to 2-0 FanTaSy. A 1-1 for Super to take FanTaSy off the board would already be great. Then you send out INnoVation. It is scary, though. You know, you do want to pick up a 2-0 somewhere, otherwise you are trailing behind. Overall, we do see the Stalker being chrono boosted out. As we get this set to roll. Twilight Council, the choice from Super, is a pretty regular, just blink opener. Not sure you can really make any sort of blink all day, any sort of blink all in happen. Adept able to pick up an SCV here in this natural. So doing a decent job of that. Couple Stalkers out the front as well. Blink is indeed starting then. Widowmine coming up in FanTaSy. Medevac on the way down. A couple more SCVs being built, and the Robo Facility starting up as well. So very standard out of Super. Just happy. I mean, in fairness, when we saw Super play against Dream, it was pretty standard macro games. He didn't do anything funky. He didn't go all in like he did in his PVZs in this season. He did just play a pretty straight up standard macro. So we'll see, because FanTaSy's played some pretty interesting TVP recently as well, by the way. A lot of mech styles coming out from him. But he is going to add on a second barracks already here this time, so it is just going to be bio. 2 Widowmines. Out through the center of the map. Raven on the way up, and just going to be seeing that blink about to finish. As the second barrack starts here from FanTaSy as well. So getting that second rack's up and running. 2 Stalkers around in the natural. And there's a couple of that medevac with a couple of Widowmines inside of it, ready to boost up into that natural in a moment or so. So getting ready to go for that Forge, starting from Super. Engineering Bay on the way out. Stimpack is getting going here from FanTaSy, so again, just that bio setup and very defensive as well. Siege Tank Bunker. You know, there's no sort of sign that there's going to be any way for Super to break this down as he just goes up to 3 bases. And in fairness, Super doesn't need a way to break this down. Charge on the way up, he's going to add those extra gates. He's going to play this gateway-heavy style where you're going to be pretty committed to basically making this a, you know, Stalker charge lot army for the most part here initially. There's that Widowmine drop, but great pull away from Super. Paying good attention. Remember, Super did take a map off of Maru in GSL this year as well. It looks as though we're going to have a pause called by our observer. So a few moments here to figure out what the issue may be. This is LAN. Yes, this is LAN. Super will nod. There's FanTaSy doing some wrist stretches. Important to keep that wrist healthy. Don't want to damage your wrist, of course, if you want a nice long career. It's kind of exciting that FanTaSy's done his military service, right? Because he's looking good lately, and if he's already completed his military service, doesn't have to go off anywhere anytime soon, just has to play StarCraft for a while. Which is pretty great. It's really great, actually. Oh, looks as though we might be back in. We are a little slow to switch back into the games, guys. Again, I don't control this. But it looks as though we'll get going again in a moment. There we go. We resume back into this, so... let's see what will happen here. There's just going to be seeing the Stalkers just coming in towards the third base. Yeah, I mean, in fact, Super is just set up to play kind of a defensive, macro-focused game. FanTaSy typically has struggled against Protoss players when the game goes longer. Generally has found a lot of success in aggressive timings, hitting off of 2 bases, and builds that kind of revolve around that. And with the Raven, he will have a powerful attack at some stage here with tanks as well. Still building tanks also really means he probably wants to go for some tank-heavy push. Nice scout here, catches this. He catches this up, but the main important thing is that he's going to be able to see the War Prism coming by as well. Not sure what was just cancelled there. Maybe the bunker salvaged, I think. Just going to see SCVs being pulled. So this is kind of a serious attack here from FanTaSy. He's really going to commit to this. Bio pushing across the Observer. We'll see that. So he knows that these SCVs are coming. Meanwhile, has killed 8 workers, 9 workers in the main already. Stalkers looking to try and grab a Marauder here. Doesn't quite manage it just yet. Stalker's still taking some damage. You can see these Immortals and Sentries are looking to come out the front. The Stalkers are not actually going to make it back to the army. The Sentries will buy some time, perhaps. What do you do with the Raven? Anti-armor missile into the Zealot hits all of them. You can't fight that now, so now you have to back away until anti-armor phase, but that's going to take a good little while. That's a dead shield battery right away there. The next shield battery will do some healing. Can Super hold on to this? He's supply blocked at the moment. Warpin's available shortly, but he's going to lose the pylon on the third base. If he loses that pylon, that's really bad for him. The tanks are under fire. The interference matrix hits the Immortals now. And so the Immortal actually dubs forwards there. The other Immortal is saved, pulled backwards. FanTaSy loses 30 SCVs, but has double the army supply here. Can Super find a defense? Oh, this was looking so good for Super, but I just don't think he's quite going to break it. A couple of extra Zealots moving in. He does have that pylon on the right. That's so important from his Zealots will charge forwards. They can't charge forwards without the tanks coming in, though. I feel like those tanks need to try and target down the siege tanks. He gets one of them, but a new one arrives anyways. And it looks as though FanTaSy's timing will be enough to take it for FanTaSy in game 1. The missile hit really well on the Zealots, and so a lot of damage was done as those Zealots were trying to pull back and run away. FanTaSy, Blue Terran. Top left-hand side from Pixel 1. Up against Kaizi Gaming's Super, the Red Protoss. In the bottom right-hand side from Kaizi Gaming. So, Super picks Thunderbird, I believe. This is his map choice to say, okay, well, I want it kind of sets you up for a longer macro game, right? And that is where he's excelled against Terran this season. Now, FanTaSy is a player here who has truly picked Pixel 1 up and put them on his shoulders this season alongside Parton. Like, they have led a playoff team, not just a playoff caliber team, a top 3 team guaranteed into this playoffs. And, right now, FanTaSy, they're putting themselves set up to go top 2 guaranteed straight to the grand finals, which is amazing. After a performance in last season where they got to the playoffs, they did well to get there, and they got 4-0'd, 8-0'd by Solar. It was just, at that stage, it was just, Pixel 1's manager came out and said, it's embarrassing. I feel like the players haven't prepared seriously, and they will have to do better, or there will be repercussions. In fact, there was a lot of drama between the Pixel 1 manager and Parton, if I remember correctly, because he believed Parton wasn't taking the matches seriously at all. And Parton was threatened to be kicked from the team, and Pixel 1 were looking at other players to pick up for the league for Season 2. But it all got sorted, and, well, so far Parton has delivered this season alongside FanTaSy. Yeah, guys, Jin Green Wings will be playing from tomorrow, and they'll play until they lose. They are on the first match, and every match they win is another match they will then play. As you do just see the Nexus dropping down on the natural expansion. Here's getting that set up to go. Probe from Super coming up towards the upper left-hand side. So yeah, Jin will absolutely not play today. This is the last series of today, but are guaranteed to play tomorrow. So tomorrow we'll see Jin Team LP and Triumphant Song Gaming. And then on Sunday we'll see Pixel 1 and Kaizi Gaming again against whoever wins out tomorrow, basically. It's a gauntlet-style playoff, so Jin Air versus Team LP is round 1. Round 2 is the winner versus Triumphant Song Gaming. The winner of that will then play the loser of this series, and the winner of that plays in the grand finals against the winner of this series. So it's just a gauntlet-style playoff here in the China Team Championship Season 2. I like it. Rewards teams who have performed throughout the season. There's a lot of discussion about gauntlet-style playoffs and the hype it takes away from someone having a playoff run. It's much easier to just get seeded into the finals and then win, but it does reward kind of big round-robin groups throughout the season. It really rewards you for doing well and placing well in your groups, right? So rather than just saying, oh, well, you get a better seed going into the playoffs and, you still have to play in the round of 8, for example. Oracle from Super pops out. That is going to start heading up to the top side of the map. So this game, the Stargate choice from him, a little bit of a change-up as FanTaSy getting aggressive with the first few Marines, which means he doesn't have much back at home, if I'm not mistaken. Starport is proxied, building a medevac, and it has been, I think, Hellions are running down the left side to go into that medevac. There is nothing in this main base. Oh no, Super revelates. That's absolutely the wrong choice. There is no anti-air at home from FanTaSy at all. The revelation. Oh, he could have killed endless SCVs until his energy runs out. Now Super's in trouble. FanTaSy's pushing the front. There's Hellions in the main base. And this is where FanTaSy excels, where he gets his chance to be aggressive and to kill probes early. 7 workers down. Hellions still full of health here. That's going to be 10 workers killed. The probes are lined up, and that's 15. It's going to be more. 17 workers down. He will drop for a couple more as well. Oh my god, saves those Hellions as he gets to 19. Can he drop off one more time? Their Oracles are starting to run out of energy as well. 21 probes killed, and FanTaSy might be able to stay alive. Oh, FanTaSy is absolutely killing it here for Pixel 1 in this second series of the day. And I mean, look at what he's done here. He's put Super down 10 plus workers, 20-ish army supply, 20-ish supply overall, and FanTaSy is killing it right now. As we do see the couple of Adepts will shade over, pick off that Hellion. A few probes getting taken down as well here, as we do see the engineering bay. A couple of extra barracks being built. Viking has landed to try and get some extra probes. Viking's 2-shot and probes, very dangerous. He's killed 3 extra probes. I mean, it just doesn't seem to end at the moment. It really does not. Phoenix comes out. We'll be able to get rid of that guaranteed. As you do see, +1 storm from FanTaSy. Barracks on the way up. His production is establishing for the mid-game. A mid-game which he's going to go into with full control. He's going to absolutely lead this game going into this next stage. And Super has to come up with something to get back in this. And the thing is, it takes away everything that Super wanted to do on this map. Super wanted to play a game where he can get 3 bases. He can play into macro. He can get there safely. That's what Super's loved to do all season. And I love this choice of FanTaSy here on this map to say, no, I'm going to disrupt you early. I'm going to stop you getting from where you're comfortable. And, I mean, loses a Phoenix but kills an Oracle. Loses a Phoenix, kills a Cyclone. Super does okay there, but again, overall, he's not really dealing damage. He's still losing units himself, and as a few Marines jump into this bunker. That's looking really good for FanTaSy here in this next game. So this is tough for Kaizi Gaming. This is not the start of the playoffs they were looking for. Obviously, they still have INnoVation. He got taken down by Solo yesterday. But I don't feel... Here's the thing. I don't feel like anyone on TSG's roster... I don't feel like anyone on Pixel 1's roster is as scary to INnoVation as Solar is from the TSG roster. So I really feel like INnoVation... INnoVation TVT... I feel like that's playable. We saw him 3-1 parting yesterday, so that's doable too. And then obviously, I mean, you've got the Chinese player off of Pixel 1, Firefly. He's scary. He is a Protoss. Maybe he can pull something out, but INnoVation generally has looked pretty solid against aggression, etc. So, I don't know. I don't really know. I feel like if INnoVation gets out here, he can absolutely start to make a series out of this. We are going to be seeing the Oracle going to be dropping down the Stasis Ward there, so Stasis Ward coming in to try and defend certain locations, going to catch a Marine in the front. FanTaSy coming forwards. I mean, it's typically not a map where it's easy to end these games, but this is absolutely a scenario where the damage done early can set it off. The Stasis Ward gets picked off by a single Marine, as the drop in the main is going to pull units away while killing workers as well. I mean, Oracles are going to activate their energy here for what? For the Marines to lift up and go to the third base, and now the army of FanTaSy is going to push up into the natural. He sees that Stasis Ward as well, so he should be able to get rid of that without losing anything to it. Widow Mines can burrow up, and what do you do here? Zealots don't even have charge. I mean, the sentries are getting picked off. There is absolutely no way for Super to hold this. Shield batteries will finish, but to no real avail. FanTaSy stays alive, and Pixel 1 go up top. Left-hand side, our Blue Terran player from Pixel 1. Give it up if you're cheering on FanTaSy. Up against the Red Terran, bottom right-hand side. INnoVation. We'll get a large cheer from the Chinese crowd. He is the most popular player in China alongside Scarlet by a huge margin. They absolutely, and obviously Time, but they absolutely love INnoVation out in China. There's a reason INnoVation and Scarlet get invited to pretty much every Chinese event. There's a reason Kaizi sent him out as the All-Star yesterday. It's truly INnoVation is a superstar in China, honestly. Him winning WSG was actually probably better for StarCraft 2 than Maru winning WSG, because the Chinese love him so much. For him to win a tournament in China was absolutely crazy. Especially like a massive tournament like WSG. The crowd loved it. Why do they love Scarlet? They just love Scarlet. She's just very popular out in China. Extremely popular out in China. That's why she was the first non-Chinese player pretty much to join a Chinese team in Newbie. I mean, Newbie's a huge Chinese organization as well. And they give her a very strong salary, I believe. But yeah, very big roster, big kind of following in China. As we do have the first game of this TVT. Setting up, Reaper opening, and an expansion from both players, so neither of them going to play a second gas opener right away. As we get going into this first map. Reaper of FanTaSy just checking that proxy location. The SCV from INnoVation is saved, so he's going to try and use that SCV to go forwards here. And to try and take a fight. We saw FanTaSy lost in the WardiTV Summer Championship to Cure multiple times because he lost his first Reaper. He's going to fix that here, has high ground, and he does get the shot on the Reaper. Good target fire, good play. INnoVation can't attack anymore, and that will be a disengage. Can he protect the SCV? Probably not. He's going to try go for it. Oh, he may turn this around. INnoVation gets the shots on the Reaper, and he's making moves up in towards the main base. That means he can hit the SCV on the natural. Is it in time to delay the CC? It looks as though it might just be. INnoVation turns this around, makes this work. Hellion is on the way out from FanTaSy. This Reaper of his will not be in trouble forever here, although we'll have to pull away once again. There's the Hellion. It's a Reaper for a Reaper. Maybe that wasn't necessary for FanTaSy to lose his own Reaper, but INnoVation making something happen. Gets the SCV, the slight command center delay. Make something happen there. Factory lifts off the Tech Lab. Starport will drop onto it instead. Ravens are still popular in TVT, but by no means the must-have go-to. And there you go, actually. The Banshee choice is going to be coming in from FanTaSy. They've made a slight resurgence in TVT. Some players just saying, well, you know, they're still pretty good. And, you know, with less Ravens being made nowadays, they have more of a chance of kind of getting out and being decent right from the start. INnoVation will get the Raven up, though, so he will have, you know, the technology to detect. He'll also have the energy to maybe push aggressively as well if he wants to. We'll see what INnoVation decides to go for in this. Hellion patrolling at the front here as we do see the Starport. Building up a Banshee in the main base, getting that going. Like mentioned before, them Banshees, we'll see if they can really find damage. I mean, INnoVation's also building a Cyclone though, so It feels like everything that INnoVation does is just one step closer to shutting down FanTaSy's aggression here. So good play so far. Siege Tank will just be very defensive in that main base from FanTaSy. First Banshee will take the outskirts of the map across to INnoVation's base. The Cyclone's actually out in the front here from Inno. He'll find himself a Hellion, but obviously not having that Cyclone in the main could hurt. He does have the Marines in the Raven position though, so that Banshee shouldn't be able to do much. Obviously Banshee 2 finished up from FanTaSy just recently, and that should be heading off the map. On the map, it's going down the left side, so yeah, trying to multi-prong with the Banshees for the moment, as INnoVation already going into Stimpack, mind you. He's very quick into that. A little bit later on the third CC, and there is finally FanTaSy starting up a Raven. So he's finally going to start investing into that. I mean, INnoVation moved into Medivacs already, and again, that tech lab was given up to the barracks, so Stim is already on the way, and I do like the idea of this multi-pronged Banshee. He's really waited with the first one to make sure it comes in at the same time as the second, and he obviously feels that's the most effective way he's going to get damage done here. The Marines are going to the natural, though, and there is no missile turret. We'll see if there's a scan momentarily. The first Banshee in the main, there's a Cyclone that can lock onto it, but there was no scan to extend that vision. The double engineering bay, well, one of them currently slowed. The Marines will threaten to push this Banshee back. Doesn't really want to scan unless he has to, though. This Banshee comes back in. Raven was still here. That's a kill from Inno, as these Marines coming in. Again, threatening the scan. He will drop it down to probably push this Banshee back a little bit. I mean, there comes the Cyclone. Actually gets the lock on. Banshee is going to be out of energy in a moment. Raven was there too. INnoVation cleans up. Very few SCVs lost. Very little damage taken overall. INnoVation send his Medivacs across the map without the Marines. I wonder if that was just a fake out to try and, you know, say to FanTaSy, oh, be scared of these drops that are potentially coming. As we do see the Marines, the tanks continue to gather together. 2 more Medivacs in production on the starports. And FanTaSy and INnoVation, both of their third bases, will be dropping down at a similar time. Slight upgrade lead from INnoVation, 1-1, already about 30-ish seconds along, compared to the engineering base from FanTaSy, which have just now started to upgrade. So, slight difference there in upgrades, but other than that, it's pretty good going across the board for the moment. Pretty good going across the board. SCV starts on this forward command center. SCV count will be worked out here over the next little while. Medivacs continue to boost up toward the main base. Raven coming in, gonna get hit by the interference matrix. A few tanks coming in there, and again an army from FanTaSy down in the center. This Raven setting up an interference matrix to land on a siege tank. That's a good position here actually for INnoVation, because he's gonna get the siege tank and the refinery. So the refinery will go down. I mean, that sensor tower is obviously exposed as well, and he's still in range of the mineral line for SCVs too. Gets the missile turret in the main, opens up a drop pathway for himself there. So the sensor tower coming up at the front of his third base, so he's looking to try and watch for attacks coming across. INnoVation scans, and look at this cleanup. What a position for Minnow. Puts himself in a great spot. Great use of the Raven. As we do see some Marines stepping in from FanTaSy, might look to intercept those drops on the bottom right-hand side. We're not seeing it shown, but there we go. 1, 2, 3 Medivacs. FanTaSy has turned this game on its head suddenly. 30 supply of INnoVation drops out of the skies. As he goes into the main base, he will make a play to kill off what he can. He gets the SCVs, he gets the siege tank, and he will continue to fight here with the few Marines he has left over. But now FanTaSy controls the third base, coming in towards this mineral line, sends tower down. INnoVation gives up the third, and he has only got a couple tanks left here now in the main, which are slowly being picked away at. Tanks on the low ground will get the kills. FanTaSy cleans up the main base across the map. These SCVs chasing down Marines, and INnoVation trying to fight against that, chasing those Marines off. FanTaSy does an amazing job of keeping this game level with catching those 3 Medivacs. INnoVation was dominating this game, but FanTaSy turns it around in an instant, and that's what I always say in TVT. Having map control creates those opportunities, creates those chances to catch your opponent dropping, to catch your opponent out of position. That map control goes a long way, and FanTaSy made the most of it there. Problem is, INnoVation is still up 20 workers, and FanTaSy's advantage was the army supply. That drops down heavily after his medevac gets caught on the right-hand side, and all of a sudden, INnoVation is maybe back in control of this game. 2-2 upgrade started from INnoVation, so he's going to be on the upgrade lead again at some point here. He's stabilized. He's got his third CC man in again. More workers in play. Army supplies evened. It feels like INnoVation has stabilized this back into his favor. But my god, what a moment or two from FanTaSy. He was playing from behind with the damage INnoVation got from that initial position. Really, really job well done. From FanTaSy to extend the game, but from INnoVation to still somehow make it work out for him. And the game is still close. The army supplies are still similar, just you got to remember INnoVation is mining so much more here. The investment into a second factory already, that's going to go a long way to help him out in terms of his siege tank count. So that's something to watch out for here as well. This medevacs not doing much. This drop gets shut down quite easily, actually. We'll still get a couple SCVs perhaps, but well, gets more than afford 4 SCVs, considering the drop got shut down. Isn't bad, but still, it's a medevac and 8 Marines for 4 SCVs. Problem is, FanTaSy just can't afford to trade like that when he's behind on workers still. INnoVation. Investment into Vikings as well. It's going to mean that he's going to have the ability to go in towards that air control. He's going to be able to shoot down medevacs off his opponent more easily in the fights. Also, a 4th command center is finished from INnoVation in position. So he doesn't even have to fly that out. And Inno, going for a push up to the top side, doesn't have an army advantage, but will be about to have 2-2. He has got a Raven, so does FanTaSy. Those Raven abilities could determine the way this next engagement goes. Marines, tanks, medevacs, Vikings and a Raven. The army for INnoVation to try and do something here as he pushes forwards. He might just get the same position he had before, that position behind those rocks, where you can hit the refinery. You can see the tanks, obviously, from FanTaSy just aren't in range to protect the refinery necessarily. So INnoVation might just siege up there again. He's going to stim an interference matrix. It's kind of a weird position to make. It's kind of a weird position to stim. I don't mind the matrix, but the stim I don't really understand because I'm not sure what that's really achieved. The matrix was great. Kills 2 siege tanks just like that. Now a tank trying to come into position on the high ground. Oh my god, 4 tanks dead from FanTaSy. His Marines trying to do something on the bottom side of this. They just can't push into 4 siege tanks that are already sieged though, and INnoVation finds again another really great fight. He's going to stem forwards, a couple of tanks get picked off, SCVs are being massacred, there's just not enough defense on this low ground. And so that third base is getting picked off. There is an army in the middle, Marines and medevacs, which are getting pushed away by the tank fire. Vikings still firing off, tanks are going to siege, and they're going to get hit by these interference matrices. More Marines on the right-hand side, picking off Vikings as well. Marine, Viking, Raven through the center of the map. This army of INnoVation just coming down the bottom side, gathering up again, and I mean, look at the worker difference. 30 workers difference. Another base from INnoVation building out to the right side of the map. FanTaSy has an equal army supply, but if he doesn't make something happen here and now, INnoVation is just too far ahead to catch at that point. So this is FanTaSy. His move to try and checkmate INnoVation. Can it happen? TVT allows for these comebacks. INnoVation just has too much info about where FanTaSy is moving, though. You can see his Marines and tanks already coming over to the left to be in position, and so FanTaSy will not find that opening. More Marines coming back through the center here. INnoVation, Marines and tanks back through the center as well. That positional warfare continues. Two more starports added in. Fusion core building as well. There's a few Marines just heading up this top side. The Marines of FanTaSy quick to come forwards in this as well. And again, a little bit of a standoff between INnoVation and FanTaSy. FanTaSy has the larger army supply, about to equal up the upgrades, but of course INnoVation has a huge bank. So when you've got 2k sitting there, it doesn't matter if you trade a little bit worse, as long as you're able to stop your opponent pushing into your production lines. FanTaSy has way less tanks in this army composition also. So his army's not just kind of... His army's a bit larger, but it's also a bit worse. It's better in a mobile fight where INnoVation isn't sieged. Obviously, then you've got to find INnoVation on siege, and that's not easily done. The scans being placed from both players, consistently keeping track of where each of them are. Neither of them giving their opponent an opening or an opportunity to do anything crazy here just yet. There's a few Marines on the left. Coming up this side. He's again going to be able to respond easily, though. I mean, INnoVation just trying to move around. And honestly, he can turn and fight those Marines quite easily, even for the medevac. I think he outnumbers just enough. So let me see in the Sensor Towers. Making those rings. INnoVation sees everything coming his way from a mile away. Liberate down the bottom side. He's going to be looking to siege up that mineral line in a moment or two. He's going to get a couple SCV kills. I mean, nice from FanTaSy to put out some damage here. INnoVation, his bank is decreasing, but why? Because he's building battle cruisers. Yamato cannon coming up as well. He's not afraid to just say, right, well, if I can't end this game, I'm not going to force it. I'm just going to slowly tack up to the point where you're not going to be able to respond. FanTaSy is investing into Corvid Reactor and more Ravens, so looking to maybe matrix the BCs out of these fights. INnoVation gets another sensor tower up. We'll be able to keep even better track of FanTaSy's army movements through the center, right side of the map. INnoVation will repair this CC, and that should be a dead metal. That medevac's still not exactly in a great position. One Viking, and that goes down. We'll see if INnoVation sends something over to deal with that. I mean, he should, right? Because it's primed to go and annoy him on another base. FanTaSy has a lot of starports up himself. There's a TVT for you. It's not always easy to just shut it down and to close out a game, and that's what we're seeing at the moment. INnoVation, despite the lead, can't just end the game just like that, but obviously is able to take attack advantage, is able to take a base advantage, and overall is still is leading this, but it still just puts you one bad fight away from perhaps being in a lot of trouble. Tank siege here, and ooh, FanTaSy kind of commits for that. Tank fire should go on each other here, and that's going to be FanTaSy that takes the worst trade of it. BCs are showing up, and those are going to start pushing the tanks back, but here come the Vikings to respond. The Ravens in play as well. Yamato cannons will be ready on those BCs. Marines on the right-hand side harassing there. There's the Matrixes. There's the anti-armor missile. Can those Ravens make the difference? Vikings going to turn around and fight a little bit. The BC is so far preserved from INnoVation. He has tanks on this mineral line again. How many times has INnoVation used this position in this game? Too many for FanTaSy, honestly. He's lost a lot. Oh, teleports away. Nice play there as well, as you do see the scan dropping down, and the orbital still taking damage. FanTaSy. Army supply is still even, but again, it's a worse army for FanTaSy. And INnoVation is still mining more as well, so the rebuild from INnoVation is obviously more frequent, better. I mean, that's a nice little interference matrix, but the tanks weren't even siege from FanTaSy, so he's going to get one tank for the cost of what? Maybe he gets another couple. We'll switch away as the Marines counterattack. Fresh starports over here in having some issues. Battlecruiser picked off as well. INnoVation didn't have kind of an army to actually defend this, so this Marine play will get quite a bit done. Those tanks do end up falling. Okay, he's going to lose another battlecruiser. I mean, these are kind of expensive. This one teleports away. Now he's losing Vikings. INnoVation loses a lot here. FanTaSy just Marines straight up the center of the map. He's going to get +2 ship weapons. And INnoVation is really struggling to shut this down. So much damage dealt by FanTaSy with this Marine attack, and he's going to get another BC. What a play by FanTaSy. He does so much damage. I mean, does that win him the game? Maybe not, but it puts him once again in a position where he's keeping INnoVation pinned back, keeping INnoVation busy. He keeps himself alive. His tank sieges up right next to these structures that are built, and the starport's trying to reestablish here yet again. 16 Vikings against 9 and 4 battlecruisers. I feel like actually FanTaSy might have the air control of the 7 Ravens in play as well. What does INnoVation have? 9 tanks, 21 Marines. I actually don't know what INnoVation's lead is in this army supply. Probably in production at the moment, I would imagine. Interference Matrix is going down. The Vikings, again, they're outnumbered. Auto turrets, too. And FanTaSy is making this happen. This Sky Army is winning this game for him at the moment. We see these BCs in trouble as well as they get shot down as they're spawning. They do just teleport out of there. But INnoVation's production is being camped, and these Marines still pressing forwards. FanTaSy, this is a heck of a comeback. He's making something spectacular happen here. And can he close it out? He might just be able to. Marines pushing forwards. INnoVation is going to have some of his tanks matrixed. These Marines are going to dive for it here. There's only a couple of sieged up tanks. The Marines will split a little bit, and they will clean up this tank line. Oh my god. FanTaSy. Interference matrices again. Now Marines from INnoVation, but there's going to be tank coverage from the right-hand side, which means those Marines can't push underneath the Vikings. INnoVation's messed up multiple fights now, and FanTaSy has outpositioned him here. Position is a resource in this Terran versus Terran, and FanTaSy is using it better than any other resource he's had this game. What a game so far. First game between FanTaSy and INnoVation, a 21-minute epic. And remember, if INnoVation loses this map, he can still take a map of FanTaSy to knock him down, but it would mean that INnoVation would have to be revived and he'd be on his last life. The Raven play was the perfect choice from FanTaSy. It has absolutely given him so many fights which he could win, where otherwise he would have been in trouble. BCs will teleport across the map, and INnoVation will look to hit the heart of FanTaSy's economy here in this upper right base. I mean, INnoVation lost so many SCVs recently. To do some economic damage is really important for him. The problem is these BCs are stuck here. There's no teleport available on them, which means that FanTaSy should be able to clean those out. As Vikings coming in from the top side. Raven there as well. Marines fighting the orbital command on the left also. We're going to see a few of those SCVs dropping down. Battle cruisers make their way to the next space along, and FanTaSy's losing a lot, taking a lot of damage. He's going to turn, he's going to kill the Ravens! Oh, Interference Matrix is going to save the day for the moment. That next Raven, though, is in trouble the second this BC comes out of Matrix. He should target the Raven, doesn't. It's a shame. 22 SCVs lost from FanTaSy. Worker counts are even again. Army supplies are still up there. BCs continue to harass. One of the issues for the BCs, their upgrades just aren't quite finished up. Not where they want to be, and it's definitely causing some problems. Armado cannon off onto him. Medevac, please kill this Raven. It's such low energy. FanTaSy is not on great eco, so rebuilding Ravens is not like an amazingly easy thing to do. Now, INnoVation, he survives because his economy was so good. And the army supplies are still similar-ish. You know, still build. I really feel at this point Inno should stop building BCs, because 1 or 2 BCs at a time is not going to do anything for him. The only thing it'll do is a lot in terms of harassment. Problem is, how do you fight this army with FanTaSy, who has 7 Ravens in play? 7 Ravens pushing forwards. BC does teleport across, so harassment once again line up. INnoVation, does he want to base trade? No, he does not. He wants to turn around. He loses, or he kills, sorry, a Raven here with the missile turret. FanTaSy puts himself in a position to deny multiple bases of INnoVation. INnoVation, yes, killing off SCVs. Might get that planetary fortress. I mean, the SCVs will pull back into repair, give themselves up to keep the base alive. And now INnoVation is moving forwards for the counter-attack, but he's given FanTaSy so much time to prepare and set up units to defend against that. So, as the bottom left base of INnoVation goes down, FanTaSy is going to be looking to defend. This Interference Matrix goes down to kill this BC. The Marines chasing it down will not get the kills. It does push the BC back for the moment. 2 tanks there. I feel like that's the moment INnoVation just has to dive on 2 tanks, right? You can't just let those slow you down like this. INnoVation. Tanks will siege. Marines coming around as well. Marines on the top side. They might get this orbital command, actually. And this is another very important base from FanTaSy. But overall, I think FanTaSy has done enough now to trade well enough throughout this game to the point where it doesn't matter if he's losing economy. He has the army to win this game already on the map. Here we go, Marines pushing up this ramp, and we're going to be seeing Supply Depot going down, a couple of tanks being picked away at here. Here we go, INnoVation's play to break FanTaSy on the other side. And he will be able to break through this, so these defensive units going down. The army supplies will get close once again. INnoVation building another battle cruiser. Not sure if that will ever get up here. I would tend to say probably not, but where is the starboard? I think it's that one in the top side blocked by the scoreboard. BC on the top side harassing that planetary fortress again. INnoVation diving straight for the production lines. And there's only Marines here to defend, so INnoVation should take this down. He's going to kill another 10 to 15 supply of Marines. His BC's still building. He's got 2 BCs on the top, which are going to get rid of this planetary. FanTaSy's out of money. INnoVation still mining on that upper right base, by the way. That's going to be a very important base for him in the end. If he gets that battlecruiser out, that's such a big deal. As this one, tried a Yamato, but just going to get interferenced. I guess the BC is not going to do that much overall. The air control from FanTaSy is really commendable here, as now we're in full-on base trade territory. FanTaSy, 120 supply to 95 entering the base trade, has bases to the far right side mining. So does INnoVation. The economy of this game is now going to be featured in the top right of the map as Vikings taking damage to missile turrets, nearly going down. I mean, INnoVation has so little anti-air, you can't really let that happen. The command gets shot out of the sky by Vikings. Marines working their way over. That's a planetary fortress up here, so that's going to take units to take. That's going to cost units to take down, unless he just siege tanks it from a distance, which he might just have to. I don't think he's in a position where he can afford to like just kill this base slowly. I think he just quickly. I think he just has to take it down slow and keep his units alive. Inno is running with SCVs. FanTaSy has kept some production alive here. Still has bases in the upper side of the map. SCVs from INnoVation. They're going to lose some of. Sorry, they're going to use some of his last eco currently on the map to take this down. We're going to see INnoVation unsieging. Down 30 army supply. Needs a really good fight to turn this around, but FanTaSy has all the tools to make this not a good fight, of course. Viking shots are good at the moment. Marines backwards and forwards here. A couple of tanks and sieging on the right side from FanTaSy, and we really do have a little bit of a positional war now as INnoVation tries to find a way out, but I think he's cornered. FanTaSy's just leapfrogging tanks forwards, and INnoVation's going to have to run through tank fire to get out of this corner. He's going to kill off the rocks to escape. Oh, he's going to lose 1 tank in the process at least, though. Anti-armor missile, all the turrets as well. He's going to get all of the tanks. FanTaSy has nothing to be afraid of anymore. A couple of Marines will fight against the Ravens. Marines now chasing in from FanTaSy as well against the anti-armor. He should be able to win this out. The BCs get interference matrix. The auto turrets drop down, and INnoVation will lose absolutely everything to type out GG. Top left-hand side. He's on a winning streak right now. Pixel One's FanTaSy. Bottom right, our Red Terran player from Kaizi Gaming. INnoVation. Remember, guys, if INnoVation loses this map, the series doesn't end. It's just FanTaSy will stay on, and FanTaSy will be the next opponent for INnoVation again when he gets revived. So this one is basically just, can FanTaSy stop Kaizi getting a point on the board already? Is the crowd live? Yes, it is. When did FanTaSy get so good at SE2? This year, man. He's been really sick. So, game number 2. See what's going to happen as we do have barracks on each side of the map, getting this ready to roll. Second map of this series, and just gonna see this SCV from INnoVation wandering up to the upper left-hand side. Is gonna be moving in towards the main. Command Center getting dropped down into the natural from both sides. So both will decide to expand here early, same as the last game. Factory from both, as we just wait to see where this game's gonna go. Reports in the chat that the Chinese commentator said INnoVation can't be the ace player, but I don't see how that makes sense. Unless they're gonna force Kaizi Gaming to play with Bunny because they've got 4 players. But that means it's typically worse for them to have more players on their team. That'd be such a stupid rule. That'd be a really stupid rule, right? Because if you can only revive if you have 3 players, then it's actually better for Kaizi to just drop one of their players from their roster so they can revive INnoVation. This is game 2 of the best of 2. So again, no revival used yet. This is just the continuation from the best of 2 that they play. So yeah, no revival used yet, guys. You can see that Kaizi have not been deducted their life yet. So this isn't INnoVation's last life. Again, this is INnoVation's chance to respond with a win to knock FanTaSy and a life off from Pixel 1. Raven on the way up on each side of the map here. This time FanTaSy not opening with those Banshees. They did nothing last game, actually. The Banshee shutdown was really effective by INnoVation. Really nicely done. Wings there. Going to pick off a Hellion. As we set this up, get this going. Raven is about to pop out on both sides, and the Cyclone building up from FanTaSy as well. So getting that up and running. Starport moves down the bottom, drops a reactor. Barracks moves over to the tech lab. Two more barracks in the main base. Engineering bay being built, looking towards the +1. Pixel 1 need to win 8 games. They don't need to. I mean, if FanTaSy only picks up 1 point here and he gets beaten, they still only need to win 1 more map. So they only need to win 1 more map after this series. They don't have to win 8, win 7. They just have to win 1 more map after this one. Seeing the mule. Dropping down in the natural starport. Gonna build up the reactor. So there's a double medevac drop from INnoVation, so it does have that Raven leading the charge up top as well. Do you see a couple Hellions, Reaper, Cyclone into the middle of the map here and trying to see where they can go and what they can do. Couple tanks going to get interference makers here as the drop comes in. From FanTaSy coming up. A couple SCVs went down. The tanks will come out of Matrix, but I think it's a... Well, you know what? The tank and the auto turret is actually going to kite away now. Can INnoVation save the Raven? For the moment he can. A couple of Marines get in range of the tank though, so splash damage will not be done any longer. For SCVs killed, INnoVation loses a lot of units to do that, but he did kill a lot of Marines as well. Tanks through the center of the map, down to the bottom side. Hellion, Cyclone, Reaper picking their way through the rocks here. FanTaSy on the counter attack has +1 finished, has a bigger army supply at the moment, so looking to try and get something done. Couple of Vikings just going to be picking their way through this medevac, which gets pretty low. Will drop into the main. I mean, that's the distraction technique from FanTaSy. He's going to try and distract in the main and then push at the front. Let's see what he does. He's just going to be seeing this army pressing up. Here we go. I mean, INnoVation wasn't even sieged on the low ground, so FanTaSy's going to get a siege on INnoVation's natural. SCVs pulled into the fight. Matrixes the tanks. SCVs are going down quickly here as INnoVation is apparently in some trouble. FanTaSy will get cleaned up. but not before taking down 27 SCVs. What a push from FanTaSy, and he's still alive with Hellions on the left. 34 workers killed, and INnoVation is in trouble here in this game number 2. FanTaSy is looking great. Continue to get up into this. Army from INnoVation is strong for the moment, but will struggle over time. 20 workers ahead, FanTaSy. Again, if he wins here, he stays out, and he can look for his all kill against Kaizi Gaming to put Pixel 1 into the grand finals. God, I'm worried for FanTaSy's hand, though. What if FanTaSy all kills? What's Firefly going to do to FanTaSy's hand? I have no idea. Because Firefly didn't want to let go earlier. FanTaSy is going to come forward with some Marines. He's got a new CC on the way up, so 4th base already being established from FanTaSy. I mean, here's the thing on Thunderbird, though. This really is a map where it's difficult to end the game when you're ahead, so we'll see what FanTaSy does to try and do this. Vikings and a Raven in the natural expansion, and just going to be seeing the medevac is going to unload a few Marines over the right-hand side. That drop in the main before was such a great distraction technique. It was similar to what he did in the TVP earlier. Boom, just one drop in the main, push to the front. Oh, he's going to try and drop Erna over here. He does have an interference matrix to drop if he wanted to, but he drops the anti-armor missile. That doesn't go well for FanTaSy. He loses units. And he will try and escape away, but the Vikings chase for some kills. Now, this is what I mean. It's very hard to end this game on Thunderbird, and so FanTaSy has to be careful he doesn't just go throwing away too many units for no reason. This is nice, though. Drop into the natural. It's an unprotected natural expansion. Some of these SCVs are already low, so they're going to drop fast. I mean, there you go. 6, 7 workers already killed. If you target fires workers, he should get a few more. You can see those numbers rising quickly. 12 workers for a drop. And that's going to keep INnoVation back to 20 workers down once again. Tank still setting up in the center. So do you see tanks, Marines, Vikings pressing into the middle? FanTaSy is siege in the middle though, and actually makes a dive for 1 and 2 siege tanks. Loses a few Marines, but worth the pickoffs. INnoVation's air control is the one thing that's maybe keeping him in this, and he will get Liberators up. So as FanTaSy's Raven comes back, I'm not sure if that's a new Raven, might be. The air control from INnoVation is maybe a problem, because with Liberators coming into play, it could get messy. Tanks will siege. Looking to press forwards a little bit. Tanks will siege up again. Just going to see tanks continue to try and push forwards a little bit. Marine's going to be continuing to press on forwards here from FanTaSy as he's looking to break this down. 4 tanks will drop. Another tank picked off as FanTaSy pushing through, looking good at the moment. Medevacs on the right, setting up as well. A couple of Liberators sieging. So I'm still pressing the front a little bit. Vikings are still the one thing that kind of INnoVation has a little bit of. These tanks, though, in position. FanTaSy covering that right-hand side angle. Just going to see tanks, Marines continue to press forwards a little bit. FanTaSy again. If he wins this, he can stay out for his all kill, which is really kind of exciting. just going to be seeing this army still pressing forwards a little bit, and Medevac will load up to the high ground here. The Vikings actually out on the left, so they weren't in position to deny this. And again, it's just these little plays from FanTaSy. He's actually going to get Marines underneath Vikings, so multiple Vikings go down. And you know, when INnoVation's one thing that's kind of keeping him in the game somewhat is air control, losing a couple of Vikings obviously isn't brilliant. FanTaSy is slowly working his way now around the right-hand side, trying to close in on this container of his opponent. He's actually going to go for this here. Here we go. Just has the concave. Now he's fighting into a planetary as well. Is that enough to save INnoVation for the moment? Feels like FanTaSy loses a lot of Marines. I think INnoVation will defend. There's 3-3 upgrades coming on either side. Little scan. There's a tank getting shot down. Still have FanTaSy on the front here. Tanks continue to fire in the planetary fortress, taking a lot of shots. Planetary fortress is about to drop here as the tanks continue to siege up. Planetary will drop in a moment or two. And this is the problem for INnoVation. Losing a fourth base is really FanTaSy making a play to shut him out of this game, because while INnoVation can hold on and on and on without a fourth base, he will not. An SCV count loss trying to prepare this hurts as well. Marines pressing forwards, planetary forwards goes down. Here we go, the Marines continue to stem into this, and the tank goes down. Marines will back off for a moment. FanTaSy building up into Ravens, Vikings, air control for himself so he can break that control of INnoVation. That's been his major difficulty so far. I mean, he's pushing tanks forward so aggressively now as INnoVation will stim down this ramp. That is as he starts in the top left. In the bottom right, we will start with our blue Terran player sending an early SCV across the map, FanTaSy. INnoVation has to win this 2-0 from now. He has to win 2 maps in a row against FanTaSy to knock him down. If INnoVation wins 2 maps in a row, FanTaSy will be knocked off, and the next player will finally come out from Pixel 1. Kaizi will finally get a point on the board. And it gives FanTaSy some room to work with, because all FanTaSy needs is 1 map against Inno to shut him down here. So yes, INnoVation does have to win 2-0, but if he loses 1 map, that's it. It's over. As you do see 2 barracks setting up on the left-hand side. FanTaSy with that proxy racks opener. SCV down through the center. INnoVation will scout, so you will know there's no barracks on FanTaSy side of the map a little bit early. INnoVation, by the way. FanTaSy, by the way, sorry, is building a tech lab, so he's not going to Reaper. He's going to Marauder. Okay, then. SCV here from INnoVation moving around in the main. Do you see the barracks is going to be coming up? It's going to be a tech lab number 2 about to finish. Marauder's in production at the moment, so Proxy 2 Max Marauder. I mean, INnoVation builds 2 bunkers right away, right? The SCV Scout is so good for INnoVation here. With 2 bunkers up, the damage to be done is going to be limited. Probably after 3 Marauders, we'll lift up a barracks. We'll use that for high ground vision. Should at least be able to kill that supply depot, although INnoVation didn't build a second supply depot at the front, which means he actually keeps it very safe. And if a second supply depot came to that right-hand side, that would have been troubling, of course. So I actually think this is a really good setup defensively for INnoVation right now. That's 2 Marines into that first bunker. Reaper across the map actually for INnoVation will deal damage as well. FanTaSy has nothing at home. Theoretically, INnoVation should never lose this Reaper and should be able to deal endless amounts of damage. Okay, FanTaSy is going to make the play to try and dive into the base with the Marauders, which is going to be able to bypass the bunker play. It blocks the Marine from getting in the bunker by the Marauders. That's cute. Now he's killing the Marines off, actually. FanTaSy's going to get all the Marines! Oh my god, FanTaSy's making something happen here, guys. There is no units out from INnoVation. Oh my god, and that Reaper. Did the Reaper go down? Is the Reaper coming home? I don't know where the Reaper is. I think the Reaper went down. Oh my god, SCVs are looking for the surround, but he doesn't quite get it. He blocks one Marauder on the high ground, but this is 5. Marauder's still alive. There is going to be a Widowmine Burrower in there. Can that go off on the low health Marauder? No, not quite. So it will cost another Marauder. No, it'll be a scan, and the Widowmine will go down. INnoVation just lost 3-0 to FanTaSy. What's happening? This bunker falls. There's one Marine in a bunker. INnoVation has nothing left at all as FanTaSy is on the verge of all-killing Kaizi Gaming. Absolute favorites in this league. They have to be as FanTaSy takes down the other depot. INnoVation has messed it up. He lost too many units coming out of the bunker. And now this barracks is going to be stopped before another Marine comes out. Here we go, SCV's pulling in again. It one-shots the Marines. The Widowmine goes down. And FanTaSy all kills for Pixel 1.